Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:07. It's O'Connor and Company. Thanks for joining us here on our special New Year's Eve celebration. Coming up at 8:05, we'll speak with the Daily Caller White House correspondent Reagan Reese about everything that she's experienced this year, covering this extraordinary, historic first year of Trump's second term. And, of course, we've got an eye set toward the midterm elections in 2026. And let's face it, we're kind of in the final countdown for the 2028 presidential election. So
I saw what you did there, Larry.
All
Very
those
clever.
candidates. It's Larry O'Connor alongside Patrice Onwuka. Good morning, Patrice.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Joining us right now, I got to tell you, when you look back on 2025, and you look at, some highlights of the year, obviously you look at on a global scale for our country, for our planet, for our city, but on a personal level, one of my highlights was being able to go on the Media Research Center cruise, along with my friends Dana Lash and with Joe Concha and all the great people over at Media Research Center, including our next guest, Tim Graham, executive editor of Newsbusters. We had quite a time there cruising Norway, didn't we, Tim?
I've already forgotten how to say good morning in Norse.
In Norse. Yeah, it involves a sauna or something, or Viking horns. I'm not sure what it is. But that was a blast, and we love all the work that you do, of course, at Newsbusters and the organization Media Research Center in general. So looking back on 2025, the high points, the low points, the really, really horrible, low, disastrous points, what sticks out to you?
Well, it depends on whether we're talking about news or comedy, because, to us, Jimmy Kimmel lying about Charlie Kirk's killer is certainly up there.
Yeah. And honestly, it's not really a comedy show anymore. I think as Stephen Miller of Red Steez fame often refers to it, it's really just a struggle session group therapy for liberals on a nightly basis.
Right. I mean, and it's sort of the same thing in terms of the news, is that, one of the things we chose as quote of the year was, Matthew Dowd, within hours of Charlie Kirk being shot, was like, well, he sort of brought it on himself with what he was saying.
Yeah.
Tim, I think indicative of how the news has ignored the news stories is really just what's happening right now with the welfare fraud being exposed in Minnesota, the daycare scandals, the SNAP program scandals, and how so little of corporate media has paid attention to this story. You guys talked about your new study here where ABC barely touched this fraud scandal and spent more time defending Somalis. Talk about what you've uncovered.
Thanks. Yeah, Bill D'Agostino has been burning the midnight oil on this one. But obviously, CBS is the winner here. They've actually done 8 minutes. And when you're saying that's the good people. But yes, I think ABC's done it for 25 seconds. And so they'd spent more time complaining about Trump saying mean things about the Somalis. Well, that's clearly why Trump was saying mean things about the Somalis.
Right.
But, as usual, every scandal has to be a Trump scandal. It can't be a Tim Walz scandal. It can't be an Ilhan Omar scandal. Every scandal somehow is turned back into a Trump scandal.
Well, and Tim, if they're not doing that, they're focusing their ire on Nick Shirley, the citizen journalist who merely did some shoe leather reporting and did what, Mike Wallace and the crew at 60 Minutes for decades made a name for themselves and won awards doing, which is actually get to the root of this corruption and expose it for what it is. I felt bad for you guys at Newsbusters yesterday because you finished all of your worst of the worst lists for 2025, and then in comes Josh Gerstein. He is the senior legal correspondent for Politico. I'm going to read what he wrote and then let you comment. Josh Gerstein from Politico said, at some point, the amateur effort to knock on doors of home daycares intersects with robust stand-your-ground laws.
What?
I mean, Tim, it sure sounds like a Politico journalist is predicting, if not calling for, gun violence against the journalist.
Yeah, isn't that somewhat weird? considering he's a journalist. I mean,
yeah.
Obviously, there's several points here, though, and this is where the community notes got in and saying, first, there's no stand your ground law in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And second, knocking on your door isn't exactly a threat.
Yeah, but real fast, Tim, knocking on the door of a public business. It does not fall under stand your ground laws. And Josh Gerstein, by the way, is supposed to be the senior legal correspondent for Politico.
Well, and I think what really is underlying all of this, Larry, though, is that whole idea of we the professionals, we know how to do this and you do not. And part of their arrogance is we know what's a story and what we don't want to be a story. So we are going to shame somebody for doing a story you refuse to do.
That's right. That's right.
Tim, if you were to look back over this year, what is the one or maybe two top stories that the corporate media refused to cover, this one aside, but the citizen journalists or the pundits, I should say the blogs, the bloggers and the podcasters have really picked up and run with? What stories would you stick out to you?
Well, we're trying to do this all the time. What's hard is we every day have to make this decision. What's the bias by omission we really want to point out? One of them is, yes, this whole question of Ilhan Omar. Now, it's come to pass that her, and the Washington Free Beacon's done some work on this, is that the net worth of Ilhan Omar on her congressional disclosure report has gone up by like 1,000+%. And part of that is because, yes, she married a guy, but this man she married now has these $1 million businesses, and you have to wonder at some point, is her office helping him make money for the two of them? And again, especially now off all of this welfare fraud scandal, is you can't even ask the question, is Ilhan Omar benefiting from this whole Somali scandal?
Yeah.
And this is a story they're just not willing to do.
Amen to that. Hey, Tim, do you have an extra few minutes? I'd love to keep you here to talk some more about last year's outrageous, disgusting, horrible media performance and whether there's any hope that it could get better in the new year.
Well, yes, I've already had my cereal.
All right, good. We're going to stick with Tim Graham here. And while we're waiting to come back to Tim Graham, and we check on traffic and weather every 10 minutes for 5s with Steve Horshorn in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center, let's ponder what kind of cereal Tim Graham eats. We'll get to that in 60 seconds. And we continue our conversation with Tim Graham. He's the executive editor of Newsbuster. Newsbuster is a longtime veteran of the Mighty Media Research Center, and we've been talking about some of the most loathsome moments from the media in 2025. Let's not forget some of the high points, though, Patrice Onwuka. First of all, obviously, the publication of my first book, Shameless Liars, How Trump Defeated the Legacy Media and Made Them Irrelevant. That was a major high point, chronicling the demise of corporate legacy media during the 2024 presidential election. Tim, I'm sure you would agree that that was a seminal moment in media criticism.
Yes, and what nifty cover art.
Thank you. I'm very proud of our cover art, too. And if you'd like to get a copy of this book for your own cover art extraordinaire, go to Amazon.com. It's a #1 bestseller. Hey, Tim, also, though, all kidding aside, it's impossible to look back on the media, news reporting, and analysis of 2025 and not recognize one name, in my opinion, that really did rise to new levels of stardom, and that is the incredible Scott Jennings, not only doing such great work on that panel on CNN every night in that odious show that Abby Phillips has tried to put together. Scott Jennings owns that show and, if I may say, owns the libs, but he's also started a podcast and he wrote a book. I mean, this was the year of Scott Jennings, in my opinion.
Sure, that's certainly true. I mean, we were fortunate to have him on the Newsbusters podcast to talk about the new book. He is, as long as we're doing plugs, but the
yes, I caught that. Very good.
Yes. I like the way you put that. It's very interesting. Like, is this secretly the Scott Jennings show? Because obviously, anybody who's on the right who's tuning into that, that's what they're looking for, to see what Scott does to people. And I think so so many of us watch it and say, why is Abby Phillip that way? You know, she could moderate this show in a way that isn't so perpetually annoying.
Yes.
But he's always in there just to make sense of people. The funniest recent one was when somebody was still trying to call it the Trump shutdown, and he was just looking at him with the face he makes and said, who was voting to keep the government shut?
Yeah.
You know, Tim, I'm on the Media Research Center X feed here, and you guys have a fun poll here. Vote for the worst media take of the year. Interestingly, they all were kind of related to Charlie Kirk's assassination. Talk about what his assassination did in this country, both I'm really focusing on your angle of kind of the media's approach to it, how they reacted, how they chose to cover even people's reaction to political violence, the worst kind that we've had. We've recently only had attempts on President Trump until, you had the successful attempt against Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, I think that what was fascinating about that, I mean, obviously it was horrifying, but then what became fascinating about that, the predictable part was you knew that they were going to say, well, this is not a left-wing thing, the political violence, that's a right-wing thing. So there's a lot of denial there, which is why Jimmy Kimmel and we're trying to say that somehow we're going to make no sense whatsoever and say Charlie Kirk's killer really liked Charlie Kirk or something. It was like, huh? Yeah. But also, just this whole notion, they all took up the cause of, these poor people who are losing their jobs for making fun of Charlie Kirk being killed or saying, good, he deserved it. And the things that they said on social media is that the people who were so energetic about censoring people and canceling people under Biden suddenly got so sensitive about the First Amendment when somebody was saying, I'm glad that guy's dead, and we had some of that this year where people were actually in the comedy realm celebrating Luigi Mangione shooting down a CEO. So it's sort of like so don't try to tell us that there isn't left-wing political violence and that you don't cheer it on sometimes.
Yeah, and listen, I obviously, as a talk radio host and a podcaster myself, I want people to be able to speak freely and not have the government intervene and get in the way of their free expression. But at the same time, I recognize that corporations that own many of these platforms and many of these, like both of the companies I work for are publicly traded corporations. If you're saying something so odious and so repellent that you reflect badly on your company, then you're subject to some kind of repercussion, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that brings us back to your story of the year, of course, the Jimmy Kimmel story, which in some way became a Trump story. That in some way that he became a martyr to Donald Trump trying to silence him, when it seemed to me it was ABC Disney making a corporate decision because they had gotten on the wrong side of two of their most important syndicators.
Yeah, and I think remember, when everybody tries to remember this as some sort of horrible booming fascism moment, to quote from Jimmy Kimmel's Christmas message in the UK.
Yes.
It was 4 programs, Larry. Yeah. 4. Yeah. He was off the air for 4 programs. They ran Family Feud at reruns 4 times. That's not exactly the gulag. I mean, let's
I don't know. Have you watched Family Feud lately?
Yeah, I do. You got to see what on earth is Steve Harvey wearing now.
Yes.
But
yes.
It's this whole notion that Jimmy Kimmel generally takes the summer off. So is that a free speech ending? When Jimmy Kimmel's not speaking during the summer? But yeah, it's this whole notion that somehow the First Amendment or free speech is most precious when it's trashing Trump as a fascist. I mean, so we all understand that they're all vigilant about their own speech while they're so aggressive about shutting the rest of us down.
Well, what is your message to the media as we go into 2026? Because we've got midterms coming up, and the spin is going to be interesting as the economy rebounds.
Well, the other person we should mention this year is Barry Weiss at CBS. I think that they are so afraid of any moderation. This whole fight over 60 Minutes where she said, well, I'm just going to delay this for a week or two. And once again, fascism is booming. It's like, this is how bad they are. It's like you can't hold a story for 2 minutes to balance it out, and let's make sure we get Stephen Miller in a soundbite in here or something, actually responding to the allegations. And so, once again, we had this whole thing with the Somali thing where they're like, we can't do it, that's not a story, because we're too busy hanging out in a Salvadoran prison trying to say Donald Trump's terrible for sending criminal illegal aliens to a Salvadoran prison. That's their idea of a horrific scandal.
Tim Graham, Newsbusters Media Research Center. As much as we like to think that we're making some inroads and making changes in the corporate legacy media, they keep doubling down and keeping you employed, thank God.
Yes,
so,
that's true.
Keep up the great work. And by
Tim.
the way, one other victory. This is the problem. We're victims of our own success here this last year. We forget all of Media Research Center should be applauded and
that's right.
Congratulated for finally, after decades of efforts, finally getting the federal government to defund the National Public Radio scam that has been using our tax dollars.
Great achievement.
Congratulations to you, Tim, and your entire team that focused on that achievement.
Yeah, now we have to make sure. Look, the minute the Democrats get back in power, they're going to try to put that money back in. They're going to try to do it. If the Democrats win in Congress in November, they're going to try to stuff it back in because it helps Democrats. That's the whole point. Why is taxpayer funds going to help elect Democrats?
Good question. Well, that's why we need MRC now more than ever. Yes, they deserve a victory lap, because the media has kind of been put into the back burner here because of the great efforts of Media Research Center, but they have to be ever vigilant, and that's why we need you on that wall, Tim Graham, mrc.org. If you want to keep their efforts going, go to mrc.org. Love you, Tim. Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us.
Happy New Year, Tim.
My pleasure, guys.
It's 7:25, WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes. First on the fives with Steve Hirshorn in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center.
Well, if there could be good news coming out of this Minnesota fraud scandal, there's some good news. We've got something to share, and it's coming from the Trump administration. Stay with us. It's O'Connor and Company at 7:30.
Longtime listeners of this program will recognize that we play the Darth Vader theme, the Evil Empire theme, whenever we're about to mention our evil overlord, Program Director Bill Hess. We started doing that after I joined the morning program as a joke, of course, back in 2012, Patrice, and it sort of stuck for a while there. The joke is that anybody who's ever met Bill Hess knows that he doesn't have an evil bone in his body. He's one of the nicest men you will ever meet. And we pause for a moment here on this New Year's Eve to reflect on Bill Hess, because, this is going to be hard. Because as of today, Bill Hess is retiring from this radio station and from the industry that he has made an indelible mark on for the past 48 years. 48 incredible years. People don't have 48-year careers in radio ever, let alone at the highest level as Bill Hess is. He is. It is not an overstatement to say he is a legend. He's also a mentor to pretty much everybody you hear on this radio station. Chris Plant did precede Bill Hess. However, Bill had a huge hand in expanding Chris Plant, getting him syndicated, getting him national out of Washington, D.C. here. Derek Hunter, of course, is the most recent hire by Bill Hess in Afternoon Drive here on WMAL. Vince Colonnese was a discovery of Bill Hess's, first on the mornings, then afternoons, and now nationally syndicated. And yours truly, I had never had a job in radio when he took a chance on me and a flyer on me 14 years ago and gave me a shot and believed in me, and here we are. And we're not the only ones here on this station. Bill was already a giant in the industry when I first met him in 2012 as a former Broadway theater manager turned editor at Breitbart. And he had a very weird idea that maybe I might be able to do radio. Bill was a programming powerhouse with a track record including Wash FM right here in Washington, D.C. That's right. He's programmed plenty of music stations as well. He used to be an on-air host, which, by the way, I think when you host a morning show like Bill Hess did early in his career, you get it. And not only is he the most encouraging and wise mentor that a morning show host could ever have, but he's also the most critical because he's been there and he knows how to do it right. And that's what's made him so valuable to me and to you, Patrice, and to Julian, to all of us here at WMAL. He rose through the ranks, starting in Pennsylvania to Providence to right here in Washington, D.C. He even had a stint programming liberal Air America. He tried his best to teach them how to do good radio, but they just wouldn't listen to him.
They wouldn't listen.
But that's important to know that Bill Hess cares about one thing, and that's good radio. Good, thoughtful, considerate, respectful radio. Whether you're a conservative or a liberal, that's fine. Just make it good. And, well, here at WMAL, when he took over 15 years ago, he didn't just maintain the status quo, he transformed it. I think it's fair to say that talk radio sounds the way it does in this country because of Bill Hess.
That's right.
Under his leadership here, WMAL didn't just survive in a crazy media landscape and in a town that is somewhat hostile to conservative voices. It thrived. It has become the top conservative talk radio station in America. And for 9 of those years, Bill Hess was also Cumulus Media's vice president of News Talk, where he oversaw 43 stations nationwide. So not only did he leave a mark here in Washington, but nationwide. If talk radio is what you like to listen to, well, you like it because of what Bill Hess has brought to the table. He's been named one of Radio Inc.'s best program directors in America multiple times, and that's not an easy thing to do. And he's also been able to steer WMAL and other radio stations through a very hostile landscape and somehow make those radio stations profitable at the end of the day, because ultimately that is the business that we're in. It is, in fact, a business. But in my perspective, what makes Bill truly indelible is not the ratings or the awards or the profit. It's the people. He has always approached this business as a people business. The countless hosts, the producers, the programmers whose careers he launched or elevated, his calm wisdom. I've seen him be calm at moments where I would never be calm. Yeah. His intellectual depth and his sky-high standards and his quiet, steady passion for great radio. He is a mentor's mentor, and he's the kind of leader who makes everyone around him better. And I don't know what we're going to do without him starting tomorrow, but I know for the rest of my career, should it last, whenever I have a rough day or whenever I'm perplexed or frustrated or even angry, I will stop and I will think, what would Bill do? What would Bill tell me? What advice would Bill give me? On behalf of all of us here at WMAL, I want to thank you, Bill Hess, from the bottom of our hearts, and every listener who's ever tuned into WMAL. You truly are a giant. God bless you, and you've earned this retirement. Have a good one.
Thank you, Larry.
I'm fine.
You're fine.
It's 7:43.
Hey, it's Chris Plant. Find out what the media don't want you to know. Coming up this morning at 9, right here on WMAL.
Hey, Patrice Onwuka.
Yes.
I just got a text from Bill Hess telling me that I was late for traffic.
That is indicative of Bill.
Yeah, some things I will not miss. So we have an update on the fraud story out of Minnesota. Deputy Secretary of Health and Human Services Jim O'Neill made an important statement yesterday. Take a listen.
Hello, I'm HHS Deputy Secretary Jim O'Neill. I'm here with Assistant Secretary Alex Adams. Alex oversees the Administration for Children and Families. Intrepid journalists have made shocking and credible allegations of extensive fraud in Minnesota's child care programs. We believe the state of Minnesota has allowed scammers and fake daycares to siphon millions of taxpayer dollars over the past decade.
My office, ACF, provides Minnesota $185 million in child care funds each year. That money should be helping 19,000 American children, including toddlers and infants. Any dollar stolen by fraudsters is stolen from those children. Yesterday, I spoke directly with the director of the Minnesota Child Care Services Office. She could not tell me with confidence whether those allegations of fraud are isolated or whether there's fraud stretching statewide.
Today, we have taken 3 direct actions against the blatant fraud that seems to be rampant in Minnesota. First, I have activated our Defend the Spend system for all ACF child care payments across America. Starting today, we require a justification, receipt, or photo evidence before we make a payment. Second, I have just signed and sent a demand letter to Governor Walz. I required a full 360 review of these centers. This includes attendance records, licenses, complaints, investigations, and inspections.
And third, we've launched a dedicated fraud reporting hotline and email address at childcare.gov. Whether you're a parent, a provider, a member of the public, we want to hear from you. Let me be crystal clear. ACF expects every state to uphold the highest standards of oversight, monitoring, and accountability for federal dollars. Minnesota is no exception.
We're committed to holding bad actors accountable. Regardless of rank or office, anyone who's involved in perpetrating this fraud against the American people should expect to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
All right, so that's the message, and that's great stuff. So basically,
Yes.
they've activated this Defend the Spend system for all ACF payments. That means that the payments across America are going to require a justification and a receipt, photo evidence before any money is sent to the state. Before any money is sent to the state.
Common sense verification that should have been happening all along.
Well, that's the thing. I think that anybody who is in the business, if you're in the banking business or finance business or any kind of major corporation, you already have these provisions in place to make sure that you're not getting robbed blind. But the government doesn't do that. And which is ridiculous because governments have been known to be corrupt
Exactly.
since the beginning of governments. And so maybe this is going to be this change, this moment where the oversight becomes very robust and there are actual prosecutions. Because you got to wonder when you see something like this, when upwards to half of the money spent in the state of Minnesota could very well be corrupt and fraudulent, how much of our federal spending every year goes into these siphons of fraud.
Thank you. Exactly. We always talk about the wasteful spending in government. This has been going on because it has been able to go on. The government goes after the checks after the fact and not just right after, well after. I will just point out, Catherine Herridge yesterday reported that FBI Director Kash Patel knew that the Biden administration had a probe into Minnesota fraud going back to last year and buried it, did not mention it, did not cover the 16 open allegations of 32 healthcare and home care providers accused of fraud between May 2025 and December 2020. Okay, so this is this year. The probes has been going in, but the Biden administration previously had already started to look into this. Kash Patel found out, and that had been buried under the Biden administration. So, there should be some accountability for people in the previous administration as well.
And for that matter, Kamala Harris and her campaign, because they chose Tim Walz, the person who was responsible and oversaw all of this stuff, knowing it. Well, either they didn't know it, which is an indictment of how irresponsible and inept the Kamala Harris campaign is, or they did know it and didn't care, thought it was fine, or they knew it and still chose Tim Walz because he was still better than the alternatives, Josh Shapiro and Mark Kelly, which this will never not be funny. As Mark Kelly tries to run for president in 2028, that Kamala Harris decided that Tim Walz was a superior pick than Mark Kelly. What does that tell you about Mark Kelly?
A lot.
It's 7:53. Coming up, Daily Caller White House correspondent Reagan Reese. Keep it here. It's O'Connor and Company.